Hey everybody, welcome back to our Leonardo the Lion finishing series of tutorials. For this tutorial, I'm going to be demonstrating how to attach Leonardo's little ears to his head. So we've attached his head, his chest applique. I went ahead and did his tail in a previous video. So check those out if you haven't gotten this far yet. So right now we're going to start with seaming his little ears to his head. So I made both ears and I went ahead and finished them up. So meaning that I seamed the top of the ear closed where you cast on. So I just used my tail, my cast on tail, to seam that together, and I just used my mattress stitch that I've been using for all of the pieces on Leo. And then I seamed this opening, this bottom opening together from your bind off. And in Brenda's instructions, she says to seam the front 1/2 inch of the ear together so it stays rolled like this in a tube. So, and then so my tail was sticking out the top here. So I took my tail and I threaded it back down through so that I can use the rest of this tail to seam it to his head. So let's just go ahead and start working on his first ear. I'm just going to set his second ear aside. Doesn't matter which side you start on. They're both pretty much the same. So I'm just going to get some trusty pins right here, and in her instructions, Brenda says, and I'm just going to try and angle this in a way so that you can see it. Brenda says to attach his ears to the top corners of his head, where you did those initial increases when you were making his head. So, and to center it on the seam, the color divide seam. So his ear is going to want to go right here, like so. And the other one will mimic on the other side. So I think I'm just going to go through this front bit right here. Just kind of get it loosely into place like that. See that? Yeah, I like that. And you know, if you don't like the way that something is sitting, you can just pull it out. You know, it's no big deal to rethread your needle and hold that little ear in place and start over again in a spot that you like better. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll show you guys how to do that. And then I'm going to go into my ear stitch, the bottom. Now this is, this is a little fiddly because there are already so many seams in here to begin with. So just grab where you can, and it's all going to work out. So I'm just going to go into a head stitch again. You can hear some jingling in the background. I have two little dogs that are very curious about what I'm doing. I'm going to go into his ear again. So you're going back and forth from the head to the ear, and you're just kind of holding the ear in place where you want it to lay on his head. Just stitching it down. See that? It already looks great. So, it's wiggly right now, so I want it angled like so that it looks like the photo. So I'm just going to flip him over and grab a stitch right down here. Now this is going to start sitting much more firmly on the head as soon as we get this first seam side done. Oops, sorry guys, I mean to shake the camera there. There we go. So I'm about halfway done with the first side right now. And I'm just gonna double check that it looks good from the front. I still like the way that it's looking. Yep, always good to double check. And luckily, you know, if you don't like the way it's sitting, like I said before, you just pull it right out, unpick that seam, pull it out and start over again. No big deal. So I'm gonna flip him back over, finish up this side of the seam, going into his ear stitch, going into a head stitch. See, now I'm going into the back side a little bit. Now, like I said before in previous videos, his mane is going to surround his ears. So when you first start seaming the mane, putting the mane on, it's going to go across here first. You do the perimeter first, and then you go back and do another line in front of that and around, I think, maybe not around his ears, but around the back side of his ear. So just keep that in mind as you're sewing. Like I said, as I've said before, don't be too hard on yourself, because the back side of this ear is going to get covered with his mane. So just keep that in mind as you're going. This is a fun little project. So now I'm kind of reaching the other side here, the opposite side of his ear. I went into stitch, so you can see it's just like I'm just going in where the seam is, the bottom seam. I'm just going right just to the side of it so that I don't have to push my needle through a big bulky seam, and then going into a head stitch. So I'm just following the seam at the bottom of his ear around. See? Boop. There's this little ear. So looking good, almost done. So I really like the way that looks. And it's a funny angle to sew at, guys, for the camera, so I apologize if it's a little weird. There. And one more right here. Okay. And that's it. That's how you sew on his ear. So now I'm just gonna do what I've done before, how I hide my tails in all of the work. So for this one, I'm gonna push my tapestry needle down and through to the back side of his head. And pull gently, give it a little snip, set that aside. So there we go, there's his little ear, and you're just going to repeat for the second side. So I'll come back when that's done. Okay, here he is, little ears. So full disclosure, as I was sewing on his second ear, I decided halfway through that it wasn't symmetrical enough, so I took it out and re-seamed it. So, you know, those are just the things that happen when you're seaming tiny little knitted ears onto a head. So our next tutorial is for his collar and all of like his sweater finishing. So see that, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Thanks, everybody.